Witch in Charm's Way, a cozy mystery audiobook, written and narrated by R.K. Dreaming. Part 46. Seeing Agent Constantine walking towards us, Allegra's eyes widened. "We leave you both to it," she said quickly. Grabbing hold of Jasper's arm, she hastily dragged him away. "What are you doing here?" I said to Chris, and then I groaned. "Oh, shut up, you know what I mean." He couldn't stop his smile this time. "Do you mean, what are you doing here, Special Agent Constantine, now that your murder inquiry is all wrapped up?" "No," I said seriously. "I mean, what are you doing here, Hollywood hunk Chris Constantine, in the small town of Brimstone Bay, somehow assisting the police, even though I had no idea that you have had any previous experience in the field of law enforcement?" Instead of glowering at me for being so cheeky, he merely raised his eyebrows and said, "So long as Chief Hardwick knows what my credentials are, that will have to be enough for you." I had a very strong urge to tell him that him being in town improving the view was more than enough for me on its own. But now that there was no longer a drug running through my system, there was no excuse for me to run my mouth off and say silly things. So I said nothing. I only smiled at him. "Well, Agent," I said, "how can I help you today?" "How do you know that it's you that I came to see?" he retorted. I stepped out of his way promptly. "Aunt Adele will be happy to see you," I said. "She's already whipping up another batch of your favourite double chocolate fudge cake." He closed his eyes briefly, and a look of anticipation came onto his face. It was absolutely adorable. It made me want to pinch his cheek. But I refrained from doing it. I didn't think he was going to appreciate it. I started walking away, but he reached out to grab my hand. I hadn't been expecting it. It completely threw off my inner balance, making my stomach lurch with the kind of butterflies I had not felt in a long time. I stared at him in astonishment. He quickly dropped my hand, and he flushed a little. "I came to tell you that we've released Oberon Jr. I've written up in my report that when he fought with Willie, he acted in self-defense." "Thank you," I said, my heart leaping. I had been worried about what they would decide. "Will Chief Hardwick go with that?" Chris shrugged. "He won't be happy about it, but it is my recommendation, and I have witness statements from Lorcan and the others to back it up. The chief isn't going to accuse his own cousin of lying. He's got enough troubles to sort out." "And Oberon Sr.?" I asked. "What about him seducing Lily and putting her under his mesmerism?" "We can't prove it," he said with a sigh. "That's too bad," I said, my eyes narrowed, wondering if there was some other way to make him pay for his crimes. "Just let it go, Esme," Agent Constantine said. "I'll be keeping my eye on him." "So will I," said stubbornly, and added, "Why did you let me go from prison the other night? Allegra thinks you did a deal with Oberon Sr.? I looked at him questioningly. He nodded and shrugged one shoulder. "You know how powerful he is in this town. I wasn't going to be able to hold him on a charge for attacking an officer for long, since he hasn't done me any harm. Since I was going to have to let him go anyway, I thought I'd offer him a deal to get you free. It worked. Staying a night in prison was beneath his dignity." I bit my lip. He had no idea how much that had meant to me, that he had saved my life. "Thanks." "No problem." "Is telling me about Oberon the only reason you came here?" I said. He looked a little awkward now. He cleared his throat and said gruffly, I wanted to thank you." My mouth dropped open. "You? You're thanking me?" He nodded. and adjusted his hat a little uncomfortably. This case was more complicated than I thought, he admitted, and people were unwilling to talk. It seems the townspeople haven't taken a shine to me. Yet, I said. He nodded. Yet, I hope. There is hope for you, I assured him. Not everyone would have had the nerve to arrest Chief Hardwick's own cousin, but you did, and the townsfolk will appreciate that. I hope I'm around long enough for that, he said. Chief Hardwick might not be in the mood to renew my contract these days. He didn't stop long enough to give me time to be disappointed. He continued, as I was saying, while I don't appreciate you running around talking to all my witnesses and everything else, you have helped me, so thanks. My face lit up. You're welcome, officer. I winked at him. And you know where to find me if you ever have a problem case again. He scowled a little. That's not an invitation for you to get involved in anything like that in future, he said. I don't want you to put myself in danger, I said, raising my eyebrow. I'll have you know that I value my own life far more than you value my life. I have no intention of putting myself in danger. I like being alive. Glad to hear it, he said. And so I'm not such a stupid woman after all, I said. What? He looked genuinely confused. The first night we met, I reminded him. That werewolf you were chasing got away. You told me I was a stupid woman for getting in your way. A dark red flush stained his cheeks. It was very attractive. Sorry, he said gruffly. I didn't mean to say that. I shouldn't have said it. Did you catch the werewolf? I said. What did he do? No, he got away. It was a personal matter. Oh, I said. Clearly it was something he didn't want to talk about. I didn't mean to insult you, he added. I was tired and frustrated. He still looked mortified. I laughed. I forgive you, so long as you admit that Esme Westbrim is the smartest woman you've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Maybe, he said grudgingly. A little bit. Gosh, wow. That makes me feel almost warm and fuzzy inside. And for your information, I added, I am not as inexperienced in criminal matters as you might imagine. He raised one cynical eyebrow. Because you're a crime writer? He asked. I gaped at him. Ooh, look who's been looking me up. He nodded. I always look up my suspects. But internet crime writing is not the same as dealing with real criminals, he insisted. In future, I expect you to stay out of it. I thought now was not a good time to mention to him that my recent anonymous blog post about an almost fictional crime in Brimstone Bay had received far more views than anything else in my career ever had. Last night I had written up an anonymized outcome of the Lily murder investigation, and even just overnight it had had thousands of views. It was a promising start. I had already decided to try my hand at turning it into a mystery novel. I shrugged. So long as no crime comes to find me, then I won't go looking for it, I promised him. And then I reached across and I did something that I would never, ever normally have done. Perhaps it was because I was so ecstatic with my new lease on life. I threw my arms around him and gave him a warm hug. Welcome to Brimstone Bay, Chris Constantine. And then I walked away really fast before he could reply. I hurried down the cliff path after Allegra and Jasper. She heard me coming, and they both stopped to wait for me. She smirked when she saw the big grin on my face. Are you going to stay in Brimstone Bay? Was the first thing she said when I caught up with them. Now that you've got a reason to stay? She poked me playfully with her finger. What reason? I said archly. You know exactly what reason, she said. Don't keep me waiting. Are you staying or not? Maybe, I said with a smile. The end. Thank you for listening. Don't miss the next book in this series, Once Upon a Time in Brimstone Bay. Here's a sneak peek. A preview snippet. A body in the sand. Just a bit further, I gasped. I, Esme Westbrim, was carrying a body. Yes, a body. And it was about to slip loose from my hands. I shoved my knee under his shoulders to stop him hitting the ground, and then scrabbled to get a firmer grip on his upper arms and hoist him up a bit higher. "I can't believe I'm doing this," wailed my cousin Allegra in a whisper. She had a grip on both of his legs. He was heavy. He kept sagging this way and that as we carried him, being a dead weight and all. And our feet kept sinking into the sand and hitting clumps of marram grass that made us stumble. We were lucky neither of us had landed on our backsides yet. It was dark all around us. We didn't dare use our wands to light up our way. Imagine if someone saw us. We hadn't even dared to use magic to carry him. "I'm so sorry for dragging you into this," I whispered. "I'll sort it out, I promise." "Oh, no, you won't," she hissed. "As soon as this is done, we are going to forget it ever happened." But I couldn't promise. After all, I had just gotten myself tangled up in a murder, and Allegra didn't know the half of it yet. End of preview snippet. Head over to book 2 in this series, Once Upon a Time in Brimstone Bay, for another magical cozy mystery adventure with Esme and friends. And now you've reached the end, I'd love to hear what you thought of this story in the comments below. Or you can just comment the code words, "Ooh, did that really happen?" to confuse everyone who hasn't reached this part of the story yet. Thanks for listening and see you in the next book.